Welcome back to Thoughts to Meditate and Ponder on. And for today, I want us to look at one of the parables in Luke 15. In Luke 15, there's three parables that Jesus speaks of. And for today, I want us to look at the third parable that Jesus spoke, and it's the parable of the prodigal son. And most of us know the story of the prodigal son. But for our discussion today, I want to look at how he acted when his son returned from wasting his inheritance with his prodigal living. And so, just to refresh our minds, let's go back and let's read the parable there in Luke 15, starting in verse 11. And the Bible says, Then he said, and this is Jesus speaking, a certain man had two sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the portion of goods that falls to me. So he divided them his livelihood. And not many days after, the younger son gathered all together, journeyed to a far country, and there wasted his possessions with prodigal living. But when he had spent all, there arose a severe famine in that land, and he began to be in want. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. And he would gladly have filled his stomach with the pods that the swine ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father. But when he was still a great way off, his father saw him and had compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight, and am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring out the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and sandals on his feet. And bring the fatted calf here, and kill it, and let us eat and be merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his older son was in the field. And as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, Your brother has come, and because has received him safe and sound, your father has killed the fatted calf. But he was angry and would not go in. Therefore his father came out and pleaded with him. So he answered and said to his father, Lo, these many years I have been serving you. I have never transgressed your commandment at any time, and yet you never gave me a young goat, that I might be merry with my friends. But as soon as this son of yours came, who has devoured your livelihood with harlots, you killed the fatted calf for him. And he said to him, Son, you are always with me, and all that I have is yours. It was right that we should be merry and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. Again, there are so many great lessons that we can learn from this parable, and we could be here all day. But as I mentioned earlier, I want to just look at the actions of the father as his son returns back home to him, and his actions and what he was showing toward his son. And in order to fully understand and appreciate what the Father does here, we must look at some of the rituals and customs that were practiced in that time, right? And at that time, there was a ritual that was practiced among the Jews that was called kazaza, and it was a ritual of public shaming. And the kazaza was a ceremony that a Jewish village would have for this exact situation, where someone had left home, went to a Gentile country, rejected the community's principles, lost all of his or her possessions to the Gentiles as it was, and then decided to return home. Once they would have returned home, all of the villagers would have came out and broke pottery at the feet of that individual, symbolizing that they were no longer in the community of with them anymore. They were breaking relations with that individual. It was a way of shaming that person, of making them feel completely empty. Probably more importantly, though, the ceremony would take place on the outskirts of the village before the individual could make it back to his home, if at, to add more insult to injury. And in verse 20, we read that the father sees his son. And what does he do? He doesn't go and gather everyone. He doesn't scream and shout, but he runs. He runs to the son. And as a father, I can completely understand that. I would get up and run too if one of my sons had left home and had come back. They didn't have cell phones or by any means of the way of communication that we have today. And even if the son had sent letters back home, they would have taken days or weeks or longer to get back to his father. It had to have been such a relief for the father to see his son at that distance and at least know to at least give him some comfort in knowing that at least my son is still alive. He hasn't perished in this faraway land, or he's not so far away that I can't reach out and touch him anymore. But running wasn't something that an elder Jewish man would have done. In fact, the running of the elder Jewish father here would have been seen as undignified. But the father also had another reason for running than those that we talked about earlier. He would have ran to his son in order to take the shame away from his son, drawing attention to himself. Again, I don't know of any parent that wouldn't want to shield their child from any pain or any shame. And just as a shepherd places himself in front of danger for any of his sheep, the father here is doing the same. He runs to keep the ritual from taking place because then his son isn't completely cut off. They haven't had the opportunity to do that. They haven't severed ties with him. Still has the opportunity to come back home. He wants to show his son that he doesn't reject him, no matter what he has done or whatever the case may be. It doesn't matter. You're home. You have come home, and that the father will bear and heal his son's shame. And that not only can he come back home, but he's welcomed with open arms. And when he reaches his son, we see in Luke 15:20, it says that the father embraced and kissed him. Through unimaginable grace, he welcomes him home and he hugs and kisses his son. He doesn't ask what happened to the inheritance. What all have you done? I can't believe you did that, that you stink like pigs, which again, back in the Jewish culture in that time period, they viewed pigs as unclean. No, what does the father do? The father welcomes him back with open arms and tells the servant not to just go get a robe, but bring the best robe and put on him. And in verse 24, the father says, "For this my son was dead and is alive again." We all, at one time or another, was the prodigal son in this story, if we've reached an age of maturity. No one is born a Christian. We all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, as we read in Romans 3:23. And then, as we reach that age of maturity, we must make a choice as to whether we want to stay out in the world, cold and alone, dead to sin, or if we want to make that journey back home to God the Father. One thing that can be overlooked in this story is that in verse 13, it says that the son went to a far country. This wasn't a quick walk back. This wasn't a hop in the car and drive 5 or 10 minutes down the road and be back home. This would have been a trek and a journey. And think about all the emotions and thoughts and worries and anxiety that would have been running through his head. And with that in mind, how many times as we are walking back to God, do we get discouraged along the way? How many times have we said, man, it's too far to go back. I've done too much. I'm too shameful to go back. How many times have we started the journey back only to turn around halfway or be pulled back by the grips of sin? How many times have we allowed Satan to say that the Father doesn't want you back? Or how many times do we let Satan say, make him come to you? God is just like this father in the parable. He is patiently waiting for you to return home to him. That's his true desire. It isn't to leave us out in the cold, out in the world wanting. If it wasn't truly what he wanted and desired, then he wouldn't have sent his son to come to earth and to be the sacrifice for our rebellion and prodigal living. Don't listen or allow those around you to fill your head with noise. Trust in the love of the Father, for it is greater than we could ever begin to fathom. And when you return and are baptized for the remission of sin, the shame and guilt that we feel will be washed away because the Father doesn't want to shame. The Father wants to heal. Let God heal you. Return home and allow the grace of God to make you whole again. As I say at the end of every video or lesson or message or whatever you want to call it, if there's anything that I can do to help you in your walk, please don't hesitate to ask. The Father wants you to come home, and I want you to come home too. If there's anything I can do, please don't hesitate to ask. May the Lord bless and keep you.